Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Profitable Christian Business Podcast. I am overjoyed today to have my guest, Britta Blanski, with me. We're going to dive in. She has a lot of expertise, especially around LinkedIn and a lot of other things, but we're going to dive not only into her expertise around that, but around her faith story. That's what we're all about here. We're all about sharing not only the business journey of people, but the faith journey along with that. So that's why it's the Profitable Christian Business. So how can we have our business be profitable, but be profitable for the kingdom. So we're going to dive into a little bit of that. But Britta, welcome today. Why don't you tell the guests a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much, Doug. I'm so glad to be here. As you said, I am Britta Blanski. I'm the owner of Britta June & Co., which I started back in about 2019. And I'm a LinkedIn content strategist in particular for SMBs to support their employees getting active on LinkedIn. So I really support employee advocacy. That's what I'm really passionate about.
Wow. We're going to dive into this, but I never really thought about that. A lot of people think about the CEO and even maybe some of the executive or the marketing director, those type of people being involved with with promoting on LinkedIn and that sort of things. I don't normally think about it getting down to the employee level, but you have a lot more employees usually than you have an executive branch or one person in the marketing department, whatever you have. But the power of that, we'll get into that. I'm gonna let you talk about that. I don't that's gonna be great. But I'm excited to talk about that. But first, I like to start with some getting to know you questions, kind of break the ice, right? So we can talk. We're going to talk deeply, probably about faith and about business and your expertise and all that. But I like for the guests to kind of get to know you a little bit better. So I have some fun questions. The first question is,
Okay.
if you could teleport any place in the world for dinner tonight, where would you go, and what would you eat?
Hmm. That's a good question. Can I also time travel?
Ooh, yeah, it's your world. Do what you want.
Okay. All right. So I would teleport and time travel to a 50s drive-in diner located
Mm.
in St. Louis Park, Minnesota, which is where I grew up, and it's where I worked all throughout middle school, high school, and some of my college experience. And they had, unfortunately, it closed down now, but they had the best burgers. And that's
Mm.
something that I just simply can't get where I am right now. And so, like, I want a California cheeseburger with
Mm.
fries and a chocolate malt. That's like, I would totally get that tonight.
That sounds very, very tasty. But for those of you that don't know, Britta she's in a place where she gets some good food. Don't let that fool you. She is in Italy, right? My desire, if you ask me this question, I'd be somewhere, probably not in Rome or any place. I'd probably be in one of the small villages having dinner with
Mhm.
a family that makes their own pasta and all that sort of stuff. That would be my desire to teleport somewhere and have dinner tonight.
Yeah, I'm very blessed because that's my normal, right? So, like, I get the really good Italian food all the time, which is why it's like, yeah, I just want like a really good beef patty burger. They're not the
Nice.
same here, the way they raise the beef, the cattle. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
yeah, not the same, doesn't compare.
Nice. So my next question for you is, what is the most surprising or funny cultural difference that you've encountered since you've been in Italy?
Oh my. Um, there certainly have been quite a few. I do speak Italian fluently, but when I first came here, of course, I had lots of mishaps with vocabulary, confusing two words, and funny stories about that. But I think one moment that stands out, and it's kind of a sad story in the sense we used to live in an area that's not very nice. In the sense there's actually a lot of drug dealers that
Mm.
used to hang out in that area, and they still hang out in that area. And one day there was someone who was passed out on the grass on the side of the road right in front of our house. And so, I call my husband and I'm like, what should we do? That like, this isn't okay for them. Obviously, this isn't okay for us. Like, I don't know, like, who do I call? Do I call the ambulance? Do I call the police? Like, I didn't know who to contact or,
Mm.
what to do. So I ended up calling the local police, and I don't, if people are familiar, Italy also has different like factions of police units.
Mm.
Like there's the Carabinieri and then the Polizia. So I was like, I don't even, I'm like, I don't know who to contact. So I call, and essentially I made, it was such an embarrassing moment for me because I tried to say there was like a man passed out on the grass, but instead the way I had translated it was like there's a corpse in the
Oh,
grass. They were
oh,
like, they're like, excuse
wow.
me? Like what? And I was like, there's a body, there's a man. I was like, try, so I tried to back it. I was like, no, I don't know if they're dead or alive, which I know it's like, it's dark, but in the moment, like it was just this total lost in translation. And eventually they did come and thankfully the person was okay. They were just passed out. They were fine. And then ambulance came and took them away. But in the moment, it was a huge
Wow.
misunderstanding trying to communicate with the local police.
Wow. They're like, yeah, this has gone from this level to this level. Let's call him back up.
Yeah. Right. Well, then, like to have
Wow.
me call, yeah, it was. I just wasn't using the right lane. It was like I was using medical terminology instead of normal vocabulary.
Wow. Yeah. I could see that happening to me too. I don't know any Italian. So this is a fun question. If someone made a movie about your life, what genre would it be and who would play you?
Mm, that's fun. Um, I think like the most realistic, like practical one would probably be like a rom-com.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like I would love to have Rachel McAdams
Mm,
be the actress who plays me, but that's also a little
nice.
bit biased because I think she's a fantastic actress and I love The Notebook. So, so
Oh,
if she
there you
played me,
go.
I would be like, oh yeah, okay, definitely watching this.
Nice, nice. Yeah, that's believe it or not, my wife has never seen that movie. I've seen that movie, but my wife has never seen The Notebook. I forgot her excuse for not watching it. Like she doesn't like to watch sad things and she thinks it may be sad, which there is sad
Oh
parts to it,
yeah,
right? But um
yeah.
yeah, but um I guess I can take it a little bit better than she can.
It's a heart wrencher. So I suppose if you don't like want your emotional strings to be pulled
Mm-hmm.
on, then yeah, I wouldn't recommend watching it.
Yeah. So the next question we do every time, it's a fill in the blank question, and your fill in the blank question is, my faith has taught me that blank, even in the midst of blank. So two blanks.
Mm. Yeah. So my faith has taught me that the Lord provides.
Mm,
He really is Jehovah Jireh,
mm,
even in the midst of doubt,
mm,
misunderstanding, and or silence.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Because his ways are always better than our ways, right? Sometimes we're expecting things to come as we see them coming, and he provides for us often in a much better way. So I love
Yeah,
that.
well, I think too, the way we think about what provision means,
Mm,
right? Provision is not only financial, um, sometimes it's providing peace or providing
mm-hmm.
rest or providing a person, right? So I think he really does provide, and it's not just black and white or a one way road, right? It's like he's creative, right? And his creativity goes beyond
Mm-hmm.
anything we can imagine.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I want to sit here just for a second because I'm thinking about this too, because the profitable Christian business. So a lot of people will think, well, we want to make more and more and more. Like we want to be more profitable. Yes, we'd love to help businesses do that. But at the same time, we also teach gratitude, right? There are sometimes we're so concerned about the future and gaining more that we forget to be grateful for where we are, right? And I
Mm.
think sometimes the Lord can deliver that to us. Is like, stop, take a look around. You're not starving, right? Well, like there are so many things that we take for granted that we should be grateful for, right? So
Oh
I
yeah,
I love that.
absolutely.
Uh now for the other question that happens on every episode of the Profitable Christian Business, and that is our secret question. What is the secret to using storytelling to stand out in a crowded digital world?
Mm. So I feel like this isn't like it's the not so secret, right? The storytelling. Oh, and there's so much we could say on this. There's really like two secrets that I want to share. The first is
Okay.
that um, in order to be successful in storytelling, you have to get personal. So the
Mm-hmm.
personal is what connects, especially in my framework coming into the space of LinkedIn. Everyone is so afraid of being personal, but so if
Mm-hmm.
you're going to storytell, you're going to have to get personal, and then that opens a whole other discussion on what does it mean to be personal. Um, but we can often confuse that, especially as business owners, when we're trying to build thought leadership or we're trying to educate. we like strip away anything that's actually relatively emotional or interesting.
Hmm.
And so it doesn't connect. And so then you're not really telling a story, and the impact of the story isn't happening, right? Because it's so far removed. So that's the first. And then the second would be um, you learn by doing.
Hmm.
So no one is like born a storyteller. And so you become great at storytelling and sharing your own story only by sharing. So you can read as much as you want, but as soon as you know, it's not going to, it only actually make like transforms into something if you put words onto paper and get it out into the world. And then you learn by publishing it and then realize like, okay, that was horrible. I didn't like what I shared, going back and editing it. So you have to be willing to look like a fool. You have to be
Hmm.
willing to make mistakes and tap into the personal side in order to be successful at having your story connect with your audience.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many things in there, and I just coming from the podcast. That I think this is, I don't even know the number of podcasts that I've done at this point, but I was very uncomfortable in the beginning when I started my podcast. I had told myself that I was an introvert for the longest time until I started to do the things that make me not an introvert, right? Um, but kind of like from what you're saying is you have to be willing to be uncomfortable to not be good at something. And it's like that, and not just public speaking in general. Like the first step is learning to talk in front of people, right? You're gonna make, and then the storytelling is kind of next rung up, right? Because you got to get comfortable with that, and then you got to get comfortable telling stories. So, I love that you shared that because I've gone
Mm.
through that whole process too. I need to get better myself at storytelling. So,
Yeah, well, and I recommend that people document in the sense like keep a record of what you've done.
hmm.
Because whenever in the moment, you can still have imposter syndrome or still feel like this isn't great or I don't want to share. And it's like, okay, hold up a second. Go back and looked at what you shared a year ago or 2 years ago and just like
Hmm.
visually see how far you've come, you know, either whether that's listening audibly, what you know, how you spoke and how you shared and the confidence that you conveyed, or how you wrote, or in a video. Like I found this video from when I unfortunately lost my Instagram, my very first Instagram account that I created for my
Oh.
business. Instagram just, you know, one day I tried to log in and it was gone and never got it back. I was really sad. But I have this like video share saved on my Google photo drive from like 2019 and I watched it and I was like, oh my goodness. Like I have come so far, right? And so it's like
Hmm.
it's just a good reminder. Like you are growing even if you don't feel like it. So document it and do it even when it feels uncomfortable and even when you think you're confident. Because like there's always something more that you can learn from what you're putting out there.
Yeah, yeah. The other piece I want to touch on that is really even more powerful is the ability to be vulnerable and resonate, right? Because a lot of people, especially a lot of people I talk to, they words are thrown around. It's authority, right? You want to display your authority, and they think that's with the absence of being vulnerable, or again, telling a story of like there's a reason that you are an authority. It's usually because you've gone through and done the things to get to where you are. So the vulnerability usually comes into from the past, right? And there are probably things that everyone is growing in some sort of way, even when they're in their authority on a certain thing, there may not be in their authority on something else. And it's okay to be vulnerable in those spaces, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
So,
absolutely. Which isn't to confuse vulnerability with sharing like your deepest, darkest secrets. Like sometimes
mhm.
we think like, oh, if I'm gonna be vulnerable, then I have to share about like the worst moments in my personal life. But it's like, no, like you said, it's just you have a learned experience. You
Mhm.
went through it, which means you
Mhm.
have something of value to share. And it doesn't have to be super like like doesn't need to be intimate. That's what I want to say. It doesn't have to be intimate to be vulnerable.
Yeah, and if anything, it actually amplifies your authority, in my opinion, because it creates a resonance with your, if that's even the word, it resonates with your audience, right? That okay, this person has been where I am and can help me get to where they are, right? So I think that's super important. So thank you for again for sharing that. Thanks for tuning into today's episode.
As a Christian entrepreneur, we want to give you something for free. If you go to clientsforthekingdom.com, we have an ideal client avatar generator on there for free. It's something that we've spent thousands of dollars on, countless hours out, and building out this structure of showing you who your ideal client avatar is and an offer stack that can work for your business.
Enjoy the rest of the episode. Now, let's dive into your expertise a little bit. So talk about how you help business owners uncover their content, powerful digital content.
Yeah, so I have found oftentimes that business owners, again, a lot of this depends on context. What is your business? What service do you offer? How long you've been in business, and who is your ideal client? But generally speaking, they have no problem either showing up personally on their own social media accounts, or if they're a solopreneur or a coach, they don't mind showing up on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, hopping on stories, sharing their personal life, and even share their kids and their like daily habits and activities. But as soon as it comes to LinkedIn, all of a sudden they're like, I have nothing to say. Or like, my experience doesn't matter. And they kind of talk themselves down and tell themselves for some reason they don't belong in this space. So, again, in the framework with getting visible on LinkedIn, it's all about walking them through, okay, what has been your professional experience up to now? Where did you start? Where are you currently? What was the transformation that happened? And then essentially it's getting down and asking those WH questions of who, what, when, where, why, and then
Mm-hmm.
how. And just keep asking why. And then the like really key question is, so then what? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why does that? So as soon as like you take one key idea and you just break it down into that framework, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I actually have a lot to say about this. And I do, like you have mentioned, I do have that learned experience from the past. I've gone through this, I've walked this journey. I mean, it's not necessarily right, it's not necessarily wrong either, but essentially I have knowledge that's valuable in helping someone make the next right step. Right? You don't have to have everything figured out. It's not getting from A to Z in a jump, but it's like, all right, let's get to A to B. And I've
Yep.
done A, B, now I'm at C or D. And so I can help you at least share the experience that I've had. And I have this particular perspective. So it's really talking with someone and walking them through their experience, asking the questions that they might not have considered themselves because they've just taken it for granted, or they're so close to it that there's a lot of assumptions. So which is why it's really helpful having like a third party person come in and be like, well, what about this? Or what
Mm-hmm.
about that? And when did that happen? Or can you explain that? Or that's not clear. And I don't understand that. So kind of having that third person come in, walk through those questions, ask, keep asking why, or so then what? And then be like, okay, you have this incredible toolbox here of information that you can provide as a resource to other people who are in a similar situation or want to pivot or need support in that area, and then just
Wow.
pulling one of those and putting that out.
Yeah. So a couple things on this is one of the people one of the things that people often struggle with is I don't have content, right? Because they look at their what they believe is their ordinary life, their ordinary things that they do, but going through your process, I think they would uncover a ton of content that they didn't even know they had. Um, because a lot of times we also get trapped into but like we don't see what other people see, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're in it. Like it's kind of like um yeah, letting people into our world. Like we see our world every day. So we don't think it's much to talk about, but for the people on the outside, it often is much to talk about, and
Mm-hmm.
we just don't realize that. So I love that you brought that to light. There was another thing that I was going to touch on there, but it has lost in my mind right now. If it comes back, I'll bring it back up. But
Okay.
again, thank you so much for that. So next question: what's the biggest mistake people make when crafting content on LinkedIn, and how do they avoid it?
Mm-hmm. I love that. I mean, it's going to sound harsh, but I think the biggest mistake is that people are boring. Okay. Because they're in this mindset that in order to share on LinkedIn, you have to be really serious, or you have
Mm,
to use certain jargon, or you can only talk about specific things. And like I had mentioned before, they strip away anything that's like remotely interesting about themselves, their experience, their employer, the work they do.
mhm,
And you're like, and so it just gets rolled over. Um, Apart from like stylistic copywriting, which is kind of an art when it comes to LinkedIn, and like actually how you like structure a paragraph and bullet points and spacing and all of that. But oftentimes, you know, this is just a classic example that we've all seen so many times. I'm sure anyone can open up their LinkedIn account and they've seen a connection share that they have a new role. I'm so
Mhm.
excited to land this new role. And everyone, it gets a lot of reach because LinkedIn supports that with the
Mhm.
algorithm when you share those kinds of updates. But other than that, you're like, why did you change jobs? Or why did you want that role? Or what are
Mhm.
you excited about that role? Or was there someone that helped you get that role? Did you network there? Like what kind of like there's so again, like just going like the who, what, why, where, when,
Mhm.
like there's so much to share in this. Like if you were to go out and celebrate with a friend, what would you tell
Mhm.
them? And obviously you don't need to tell, you wouldn't share all of that. But the biggest mistake is that people aren't giving more of the personal behind the scenes background story and really context that's needed to allow an outsider person to read it and be able to be like, oh, okay, like I get it. Like I'm one step further. It's not just now, oh, you have a new role. You have a new role because, and so therefore, or then, so then what's next? And
Yeah.
you get to enter into their experience with them, which makes it much more personal and relatable. They make that connection, it's memorable, and also you stand out. So I would say the biggest mistake is being boring by holding back, sticking to a very formulated corporate mindset that we have around content and not giving more background information to provide the necessary context for others to understand.
So two things came to mind while you were talking, and one of those was nobody wants to really read a white paper, right? Which is often that boring content, right? So it's adding story to those type of things, kind of like you just said. That I can see that how that would resonate much more on the LinkedIn platform than just, well, here's a bunch of details, right? Um, that is awesome. So I thought about this. So you work with companies that tend to have quite employees to try and get the employee push on the LinkedIn. If I'm not saying that correctly, you can correct me. But one of the things that I think is important here is to think about company culture, right? I think people are
Mm-hmm.
really interested in different culture, the culture of what different companies have. So making sure to express that in your content. So can speak on that just a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, and this is what falls under the umbrella of employer branding. So when an organization is, in the process of hiring and they want to find maybe top talent is kind of in my opinion, top talent is a buzzword
Mhm.
because again, also another, common theme right now is that you hire for character
Mhm.
and motivation, and then you teach them skills, right?
Mhm.
So top talent. Okay, what do we even mean when we say that? But they want to find the best match, and they put out a very generic ad, saying job ad, saying, "Hey, we're hiring. These are the responsibilities." Okay, maybe you try and go and look at their website, and they have a very generic about us, like these are
Mhm.
our values, and they have these like one-word phrases like creativity, flexibility, diversity, and you're like, okay, great, but again, like what does that mean? Like,
Mhm.
I don't resonate with the word. I'm not like creativity, and all of a sudden I'm like have this like magnetic, pull to that
Yeah.
company, right? So they have they probably spend a lot of time investing in that page on their website and
Mhm.
keeping it updated or sharing blogs. Maybe they put out company content on their page. But what's really missing are the core behaviors. And that's a frame that I don't want to take that as my own because James Mayhew is a great connection on LinkedIn. He does do like cultural coaching and cultural
Mm.
leadership coaching within organizations. And he was the one who really said, you have to align all your core values with core behaviors. And that's where employee generated content comes in because you can have it plastered all over your website, all over your company page, these values, but they don't mean anything if you can't actually demonstrate it. So I personally think like one value that's really stuck out in the last couple of years has been diversity. So
Mhm.
if you tell me that you celebrate diversity, and then I go and look at your LinkedIn account, your company page, and I look at your employees, and no one is sharing anything,
Mm.
that tells me that they're afraid
Mhm.
to share and they're
Yeah.
afraid to have their voice be heard and seen publicly online, which makes me like think, okay, if they're scared to share online or if they're not being encouraged to share and represent, what kind of diversity is that? Or are we only talking about a certain kind of diversity,
Mm.
right? So I think that's just like one example. But the key point is that having employees, whether it's executive level or entry level, talk about their experience, it's the most authentic, transparent way that you can demonstrate by showing us instead of just telling us what your values are. And so they can become behaviors.
Yeah. Wow. So, I have more questions based on that. Maybe not just questions, but insights. So, my wife works for a company that has an amazing culture, and when you're talking about that, it made me think like I know what a lot of the people say in the team meetings, and if that could come other like especially when they're looking to hire, right? If some of that what they're saying about working for the company, why they love working for the company so much comes on the forefront of their social media, like boom, wow, that could be really um, not only get help them hire, but hire the right people that fit into that culture based on these stories. Right? Go back again to stories, the stories that people are telling from being a part of the company. Um, so the other side of that, you mentioned being afraid to share, like the employees. So I think it would also probably be important to you have guardrails, right? There, you don't want because you don't want people saying the wrong things about your company. Maybe they don't have the correct understanding, but making sure that you have those kind of conversations within the company about what's shareable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
you don't want anybody going out there and sharing your financial information, right?
Right.
If
Oh, yes. Yes, of course. Yeah, no, I mean, it's always helpful to provide guidelines, especially like if you are a company that says, yeah, like we've asked our employees to share online before, like
Mhm,
we totally advocate for that, yet they just don't do it. Well,
mhm,
first of all, I would say, okay, you need an executive or a manager sharing first.
mhm,
Because, like you had said, like maybe the CEO should share, but then they don't. And then they're like,
mhm,
this manager, the HR manager is like, hey, let's have more people share. And then they're like, you're asking us, like, but none of you are sharing, and you're all going to
mhm,
be watching what I'm publishing, right? So of course there's that, like, you're watching me, I'm intimidated, I'm going to say the wrong thing,
mhm,
right? So it's like providing guidelines, being like, yeah, okay, these are our core values. What are the core behaviors that reflect that value? Okay, they're A, B, C. All right, let's talk about when Jane did A and that reflected that value, right? So you can give them these like kind of standardized guidelines before, and then
mhm,
having leaders who are actively sharing as well. Like that's your perfect, like I see what they're doing. I see that that's
mhm,
okay. They're closer, closer in contact to the internal comms and, executive suite and all those things that are like, this can't go out, right? Like
mhm.
clearly, like
Yeah.
don't share this, you can share this. And these people are doing a really good like job of demonstrating that. So like look to them and follow suit, or they're like what they're sharing is a safe space for you. The other side to that is, apart from like compliance and sensitive things that you don't want shared publicly, or obviously like just generally we don't talk about politics, or
Mhm,
if you talk about religion, there's a certain way that you can share about your faith.
mhm,
um, but people are so afraid to repel, and it's like repelling is one of the best things that you can do. Like
mhm,
if I'm
mhm,
sincerely job seeking and I come across a company page and I either have keywords, core values, I can't really tell what the culture is really like. But then if I can go to another one where they have people talking about different initiatives that they had, or like trainings that they participated in, something their coworker did to support them when they were on sick leave, or I don't know, all these like small,
mhm,
actual like real life examples, I have an immediate sense like, do I want to enter into that? Does that align with my values and what I believe, or not?
mhm,
Because sometimes it's like saves everyone a lot of time and money from the get go if we know exactly what you're entering into. But if we're all kind of like tiptoeing, trying to appease and please everyone because everyone's afraid of saying the wrong thing, but then as soon as you actually enter in and you're like, whoa, this is not like, it wasn't the sense that I got, and I don't align. And then you're back to square one, you put in your notice, you leave, they're back to the top again of recruiting. And so it's just a huge time saver if you're okay repelling when it comes to certain
Mhm.
core ideas and values.
Yeah, and talk about being profitable. Let's kind of sneak that in here. The cost of training someone to come for them to come in and not fit into the culture and leave. Um, huge point there. Like churn, right? If you want to lower the churn, and attract the right people and repel the wrong people rather. There, that's part of being profitable. So
Right.
awesome.
Yeah. No, I mean, like people, it's not bad to turn the wrong people away.
Yeah.
You're only saving yourself money and time. And that's ultimately a good thing.
Yep. Yep. Awesome. So, last question on your expertise, and then we're going to dive into faith questions. So, how has living abroad shaped the way you teach others about storytelling and connecting with their audience?
Mm. That's a really good question. And I feel like I'm at a bit of an advantage in the sense that maybe someone wants to do this and it's really hard to do. So let me explain because I haven't even said what it is. Um, I've spent a lot of time abroad. I started living abroad when I was 16. I did a study abroad experience and then I went back and then I enrolled directly at university in the UK. And through that experience, I got to study abroad in Spain. And then I kind of transferred back and studied abroad in Italy and France. And now I'm in Italy permanently. So in all these different experiences, despite having friends and community, whether it's the UK or Spain or Italy or France or even the US, when I came back, you can know people, be involved, understand the context, and be a part of it. But yet, simply because you have a different background or a different language or grew up with a different culture, you always kind of feel like you're on the outside looking in. So I like notice a lot of patterns or things that maybe someone who's so connected to it and so close to it doesn't see just because that's the way things have always been. But kind of coming from this outsider's perspective, it's like, oh, does that person realize that they're always doing this? Or like they always respond in that way to that kind of joke? Or so it's kind of this like opposite, even though I'm present and I'm involved and I feel like I'm a part of it because I've known these people for a long time or we hang out all the time. There's just cultural differences that still kind of keep us at a distance from one another. And so I think having that outsider perspective allows you to kind of find the common thread that can be
Mhm.
woven through these experiences that helps you tell that story more objectively. So it doesn't mean that it's not personal, but it's better to say, like, okay, I'm going to paint the whole picture because I'm not so close to it. So
Yeah.
I'm noticing things that the person actually inside internally isn't even aware of just because you don't know what you don't know.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. The different insights and perspective that you can have. Like it's interesting the way it's almost like you said you're inside, but you're kind of outside because you haven't been brought up the same way that they were brought up into their culture, so you can see things differently. I just love how you put that. So let's dive deep into faith now. All
Okay.
right. So how has your faith guided your approach to storytelling and building authentic relationships in your work?
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good question. And I don't know if, people in your community and, the network that you've built up here as well, on Facebook and in the group, especially in digital marketing today, there is a lot of, I would say, manipulation
Mhm.
in terms of um, how you share your success and the transformation that you offer to your clients. And so I've worked with quite a few coaches. And most of them actually haven't been faith based or because they kind of say they are, but it's not, a core value or foundation of how they run their business. And so when it comes to marketing, you're really encouraged to share a lot of things that for me, being a Christian and being like integrity and honesty is one of like the utmost important things to me. I will never say something just to make the sale.
Right.
And I know it's all about like, well, it's all, there's where's that coming to me in English? There are different shades of like truth.
Mm.
Like it's not a whole truth, but it's a partial truth. So like if it happened this one time in this way and you can use that one statistic, like it, like you're not wrong. Like it's like as long as you're not wrong, then it's right? Or it's true. And it's something that I've personally struggled with. And sometimes I wonder if it's held me back in my business, not really, I would say like playing to that game.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so foundational to me that I don't ever lead someone on or tell them something just for the sake of marketing and sales. Well, one, because I think it's wrong. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
it's really
Yeah.
important to me.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I want to lead with that integrity each step of the way. And so, if I'm not the person or if those aren't the results, like I will tell you that. So I think that's really, it's been something that I've struggled with. And it's also been something that I will stand on
Yeah.
always.
I love that. I want to sit here for a second because this is kind of my world, the marketing world, and I've seen it. Yes, they've maybe someone has helped one person achieve this result, and you don't know the context behind all of that, but then there the water's muddied after that. Like some people get results, some people don't. All of that. So I guess what is going through a lot of people's heads is how do they market and against this, right? Because it's a competitive market. So how do they get get their name out there and grow their business without having to resort to those type of tactics, right? Um, and what we teach is lead with value, right? Show your authority on the front. Like where give, Christ teaches us to give. So if you can give away a piece of what you do and how you help people, people will be like, okay, they've already helped me, right? So I know they can help me more. So that I love that you brought that up because I really wanted to speak on that because I feel like that is a question in a lot of people's mind. I don't want to do these type of tactics, but I'm in this very competitive market where people are using these tactics. So how do I stand out? You do that by showing your value and
Mm-hmm.
sharing that on the front end. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, but I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, well, I think part of it too is, and there's the whole world of screenshots as well, like taking these screenshots. And I've even, like I know someone who literally just started this e-commerce business and built their website and they haven't even launched yet. And I saw all these reviews on it. And so I was
Mhm.
like, wait, like I was like, "Wait, you already have reviews?" Like, where did they come? And she's like, "Oh no, like though obviously those are fake." She's like, "I've just learned, like I've uncovered this whole world, like all reviews are fake." I'm just like,
Mhm.
all reviews are fake. And like on Instagram, there's been this whole thing too, like people faking the screenshot, and it's just like I think apart from leading from value, it's also just, I think part of it is, again, like being personal and like
Mhm.
showing up and showing your face and talking about it or like having previous clients come on. So you don't need the screenshot or you don't,
Mhm.
even if it's real, so
Yeah.
necessarily needing it or faking it, right? Like you don't have to fake it. But if you show up, let people see you and see you talk about it or see you help people or you're helping them, like that will stand out and it will make a bigger impact than any screenshot or review that you'll
Yep.
read on a website.
Yep. Yep. And I think I think there's a level of the audience is getting smarter, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe this digital marketing has been going with these sometimes false claims and um, just ways to get people. And I think people are just onto that right now. So I think I thankfully people are looking for more authentic personal relationships with the people providing the services.
Yeah.
Because the know, like, and trust, they're really trying to get grounded into, I want to know this person, I want to like them, and I want to trust them because to do business with them. So that's another thing that we promote with our clients. The more you can build that know, like, and trust, and a lot of that comes with providing value on the front end. So, wow. Thank you. All right. So, next question. about your faith. What role does prayer or spiritual reflection play in your daily life as a business owner?
Well, essentially, my life like depends on prayer. I would say it
Mm,
depends on Jesus Christ, but um, no, I think a, it's important to use discernment in all business decisions, especially in this world where there's a lot of information out there. You're not quite sure if you can trust it or not,
mm,
and if you're looking to invest or even signing a new client, knowing that not every client, again, that's you know the Lord will provide. So
mm,
don't just sign clients because you are desperate and feel like you need that additional income. Um, but leading with prayer. So sometimes that looks like even praying before a call or like praying before you hop on a call like this. It can be short and simple. And then I also praying for my clients. And
mm,
it's not necessarily like I'm not like, oh, I want them to get results because it's going to reflect good on me, but it's really like I support their business and I want them to do well, especially if I know that they're a believer
mhm,
and working for the kingdom. So it's like knowing that their voice getting out there and being amplified is also a voice to help share the good news and is a reflection of Christ. Like I want them to succeed. So also praying for my clients, praying for before calls and conversations, and then bringing most work. I feel like every single day. It's just it's like thank you for the day. Like I have to
mhm.
like start the day with gratitude. I'll be honest. Like every time my alarm goes off, the first thing is just like prayer, um, and then just depending on that, and just reminding yourself, like the Lord provides. So when you
Mhm.
open up your LinkedIn and you've sent 100 messages, not 100, but you send a bunch of messages
Yeah.
out, and some people don't respond, or it's a no or not now. It's like okay, it's okay. Never fun to hear no. It's part of doing sales. That's just what we do. But also, it's in His timing. And so I really believe that every business decision is not happenstance. Like I really believe that the Lord is working and creating space and opening space and closing doors and open doors when the time is right.
Yeah. Um, just a side note on that. I think I was reaching out to you to be on the podcast for a while before we actually even had a conversation. So it's all in timing, right? I believe this everything that is with especially for believers is happens on God's timeline, right? So um, thank you for coming on and being part of this podcast because I love everything that you've shared so far. And just a little bit about my story, like this used to be the entrepreneur journey, right? God has led me to the Profit Christian Business. So have more guests like you that are able to come on and not only share about their expertise, but their faith. So I, I'm all for it being in God's plan. One of the things that things that I pray for on a daily basis now, didn't used to, but God's wisdom, right? That's part of my spiritual journey. It was weird because I was away on a trip this past weekend to see my sister, and I was woke up and God was telling me to um, read certain verses in Corinthians. And it just turns out that because I've been praying so much for wisdom, those verses in Corinthians were directly related to wisdom. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, God, wow. So yeah, he provides, right? And it also says if you what you pray for, as long as it's within his will, he will receive, right?
Yeah.
And so I knew that he was going to provide it for me. I just didn't know when. So,
Yeah.
so
I love stories like that. Yeah.
yeah. All right. So next question. What are the biggest differences you've noticed between how Christianity is expressed in Italy versus the United States?
Mm. Ooh, yeah, it's kind of a loaded question. I'm sure many people know that everyone knows, the Vatican is in Italy.
Mhm.
And so Catholicism is really important. And most Italians, I mean, it's kind of changing in the last couple of generations, but most Italians grow up Christian. They grow up
Mhm.
in a Catholic culture where they go to catechism and do their first communion. Um, but I would say, and it's nothing to say about Catholicism, it's just saying it's a cultural practice that they've done,
Mhm.
but they don't necessarily even go to church on Sunday, or they don't
Mhm.
live it out on their everyday life. It's kind of just like this is the box that you tick in order to get married one day,
Mm-hmm.
so that then you don't have to go to like a special route. Or, if you want to have that church wedding, then make sure you do this when you're 10 years old. Essentially, is
Yep.
kind of the belief. Obviously, there's exceptions to that, but I'm saying like generally across the board, um, many Italians have grown up understanding the basic beliefs of Christianity. And I would say without actually having that personal relationship with Jesus
Mm-hmm.
Christ and um, living out their faith. And so, um, and I'm part of a church plant here. It is a missions church, and they're trying to reach the Italian population. Although we're quite international, which I mean, God's church is international, anyways. That's really
Yep.
cool in itself. But it's also so. This is to say, it's really hard to reach the Italian because they're very knowledgeable.
Mm-hmm.
They have all the information, but it's not a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so meeting someone who actively lives out their faith every single day, I would say is very rare to come by. And so I would say that the active church is very active and very vocal and very passionate. And it's like true dedication because it feels, I know we're not, but it feels like we're such a small number.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that answered the question. If
It,
that
it it
was,
does, but to contrast, compare, I a lot of us that are not Catholic but are Christian, um, can point to the Catholic Church and say, they're just practicing religion, they're not practicing relationship. But I think take a look in the mirror, everyone, right? You may go to church every Sunday because it's the thing to do, right? But are you actually in relationship? Right. So that's my challenge is let's just not point out that the Catholic, like many Catholics are just following, like doing the religious practices, but not having a relationship. There are many of us, right? Me in the
yeah,
past included, that just
yeah.
did religion and didn't do relationship. So,
Oh, yeah,
I'm so,
absolutely.
I'm
Yeah,
so,
no, it's so true. Yeah,
so,
I think, I mean, one thing, like having grown up in the US, I don't know if you agree with this, but again, too, like I felt like it was very culturally evangelical. That
mhm,
was the world that
mhm,
I grew up in. Like
mhm,
all my friends were Christians and it was kind of just like, yeah, I'm a Christian. I
mhm,
know that, like, I know that worship song and like, you
mhm,
listen to the local Christian radio station. And so, but again, it was like, if I actually like look at my life, like what makes me different than my
mhm,
neighbor,
mhm,
right? Or like, is God really playing? Am I allowing God to play a role in my life? So I think that's very true. I think we can easily just kind of fall back on it and be like, yep, like I tick the box and I do the things.
mhm.
And we just think that's kind of like a safety net. And it's like, no, like God calls us to more than that. He wants our lives.
Yeah. I think part of this, the sad part of this, I think that also can happen is, often children will grow up in a Christian family, and then when they get older, they fall away, and the reason what may be because it was religion and not relationship with the family, right? Because I can't see a way that if they were showing real relationship that anyone would ever fall away because you don't want to lose relationship. You can lose religion. I don't think you can't lose relationship, right? It would, to me, to not have God's presence in my life is the worst thing that could happen, right?
Mm.
Um, so so the flip side of that is they should draw nearer to Him and not further away. But um, yeah, because I've seen so many um people come up and then like they came from a good Christian family, but what's going on with them, right?
Mm.
It's probably I'm just hypothetically, it could have been because it was more religion than relationship. Like this is just what we do. So, so
Yeah, well, habits lose meaning, right?
hmm
When you're not actively present in why you do them and why they
hmm
matter. And so
yeah,
I think it's a good, reminder too. Like we can all just pray that, you know, Lord, like be present in my life and help me know you better. Like help me actually get to know you, not
yeah.
just like hear about you or
hmm
read about you, but get to know you.
Yeah, and there is personal responsibility for each and every one of us, whether it's our we grew up Christian or not, that we are in the Word, right? He says the how you get closer to me is through my Word and through prayer. So if we're not doing those disciplines, yes, they may seem religious, like yes, you should be reading the Word, but that's also part of the relationship, is prayer and being in the Word. So I just want to emphasize that too. If you're having struggling with relationship with the Lord, maybe you need to get in the Word and pray more often, right? So yeah. Wow. This has been awesome. Thank you, Britta. So people find, first explain a little bit more about what you do, and then where do people go to find out more about that and maybe work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Doug. So, yeah, the best place to connect and follow along is, of course, LinkedIn. Just put Britta Blanski in the LinkedIn search bar and you find me. I'm also on Instagram at Britta June Co. And then my LinkedIn or my website is brittajuneandco.com. And so I run trainings and workshops of any size. So whether you have a mastermind, like if you're a coach and you have a mastermind or a small group, or if you are in a larger organization with small teams, I would say up to groups of 10 because the workshops really are hand-on. So they're workshops on we're going to optimize your profile, equip you with the basic copywriting skills needed in order to create for LinkedIn, and then networking skills as well. So how can you really tap into your network and build those relationships and come up with a sustainable system for you to be present on the platform. And that can also look like one-on-one coaching, because I know some people
Mhm.
just want the individual, one-on-one contact and support. But my real joy comes from being a teacher for nearly 10 years and being able to work with people and teach them in a group. So yeah, LinkedIn trainings and workshops really to become content creators for the platform and to create a warm, engaged network.
Wow, nice. I love that you said sustainable because often people struggle with just that piece. It's like, okay, I'm going to get all this information, but how do I, even after I'm done working with Britta, how do I keep it going? So you teach them how to do that, which is awesome. So we're going to put all those links that you mentioned below. If you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the or in the description. If you're listening to this on a podcast, it'll be in the show notes. So I implore you, if you need some help with LinkedIn, reach out to Britta because she really, really, really knows her stuff. Again, we talked about sharing value on the front end. She shared the value in this interview of how you can do LinkedIn very, very, very well. Um, Last question I ask every person that comes on the show because I feel like there's always one last thing that you can share. So, any parting words of wisdom for anyone watching?
Yes. I don't necessarily if they're like I feel like wisdom is too nice of a word to end with this. And it's also not my own. It does come from Alex Ramosi.
Mm.
But it is that excellence comes from sucking. So
Mhm.
you must be willing to make mistakes, or otherwise you will never be excellent. So we strive for excellence through perfection, but it's just not going to happen. So especially when it comes to your LinkedIn account or running your business or even spending more time in the Word, we're going to fail and we're just going to learn from failing. So be okay with looking silly, and from that you will grow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think that is definitely wisdom. Even if,
Okay, I feel
yeah, that's definitely
well, I
wisdom.
have it.
And
I even have it written here on my whiteboard. Excellence comes from sucking. And I'm just like, I feel like suck is not the greatest word, but it
but
captures it well. It's like
yeah,
you just have to, you're just gonna suck at it, and that's okay.
yeah, that's the only, what is it also that they say is that you only fail when you quit, right? And people fail
Yeah.
because they suck in the beginning. And then that's why you failed, is because you weren't willing to go past that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
all
Yeah.
right. Thank you. Thank you so much again, Britta. And until next time, entrepreneurs, keep moving forward. Thanks for checking out the Profitable Christian Business Podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and share.